So I'm at a dinner party, and someone asks about my Aliyah plans, and I mention that I'm eligible through my Jewish father. Suddenly, the room goes quiet, like I've just announced I'm related to a war criminal. My friend Sarah looks confused and goes, "Wait, I thought Judaism goes through the mother." And I have to explain that yes, religiously speaking, that's true. But according to Israeli immigration law, I'm in this weird twilight zone of Jewish but not Jewish but definitely Jewish enough for citizenship. It's like being in some sort of bureaucratic limbo where the Israeli government and the Israeli rabbinate are having a philosophical disagreement about my identity, and I'm caught in the middle like a very confused ping-pong ball. The Ministry of Interior says, "Welcome, fellow Jew, here's your citizenship," while the chief rabbinate says, "Hold on there, sport, we need to have a little chat about your maternal lineage." So I start gathering documentation to prove my father's Jewish identity, and it's like being a genealogical detective investigating my own family. Except instead of solving murders, I'm solving the mystery of whether my dad was Jewish enough to make me Israeli eligible, but not Jewish enough to get married in a synagogue without converting first. It's like a very niche episode of CSI, Jewish Heritage Unit. The documentation requirements are mental. They want proof that my father was Jewish, which means I need his father's documentation and possibly his father's father's documentation. I'm basically building a Jewish family tree that goes back to Moses, except with more apostles and less burning bushes. I'm calling my dad going, "Dad, do you have any proof that Grandpa was Jewish? Like documented proof?" "Yes, I know he complained about everything and made excellent pastrami, but apparently that's not sufficient legal evidence." My dad finds this hilarious. "So, you need me to prove I'm Jewish so you can move to Israel, where they won't consider you Jewish." And yeah, that's exactly the situation. I need to document his Jewishness so I can immigrate to a country where I'll immediately be told I'm not Jewish enough for religious purposes. It's like getting a visa to a country where you're simultaneously welcome and not welcome at the same time. The rabbi's letter for patrilineal cases is particularly fun. Rabbi Goldman has to write a letter specifically stating that I'm born to a Jewish father, which sounds like he's filing a paternity suit rather than confirming religious heritage. To whom it may concern, Dave was indeed spawned by a verifiably Jewish male. His father's Jewish credentials have been thoroughly investigated and found to be authentically Jewish. Please accept this child of a Jewish father for immigration purposes. But here's where it gets really bonkers. I need to provide evidence that my family actually lived Jewishly, not just that we had Jewish DNA. So I'm documenting my father's synagogue attendance, like I'm building a case for sainthood. Exhibit A. Photo of Dad at 1987, Yom Kippur service, looking appropriately guilty. Exhibit B. Receipt for high holiday tickets, showing Dad paid the premium price for front row seats to feel bad about his life choices. The really mental part is that once I get to Israel, I'll be in this bizarre dual status where I'm a full citizen who can vote, serve in the army, and complain about the government. But I can't get married in a synagogue without converting first. It's like having a VIP membership to a club where half the facilities are off limits. Welcome to Israel. You can die for your country, but you can't have a Jewish wedding without additional paperwork. My wife finds this endlessly amusing. So you're Jewish enough to be Israeli, but not Jewish enough to be Jewish. And that's exactly it. I'm in some sort of Schrödinger's Judaism situation, where I'm simultaneously Jewish and not Jewish depending on which government office I'm standing in at any given moment. The conversion question is particularly fraught. Do I convert before Aliyah to simplify things, or after? Converting before means more paperwork now, but clearer status later. Converting after means I get to Israel and then have to prove I'm Jewish enough to become more Jewish. It's like choosing between doing your homework before the party or during the hangover. Either way, you're going to suffer. It's just a question of timing. I'm explaining this to my cousin Rachel, and she goes, so you need to prove Dad is Jewish, so you can move somewhere where they'll tell you that you're not Jewish because your mom isn't Jewish. And when you put it like that, it sounds completely mental. But yes, that's exactly the bureaucratic maze I'm navigating. The documentation strategy for patrilineal cases is like building a legal brief for my father's Jewishness. I need synagogue records, community testimonials, cultural evidence, and probably a DNA test that shows he carries the gene for excessive worry about whether there's enough food at parties. I'm basically creating a comprehensive dossier proving that my dad was Jewish enough to create a person who's Israeli enough but not Orthodox enough. But the absolute best part is the community testimonials. I have to ask people who knew my father to write letters, confirming his Jewish authenticity. So I'm approaching elderly synagogue members going, "Excuse me, Mrs. Goldstein, could you write a letter confirming that my father was definitely Jewish?" I know it seems obvious from his neurotic tendencies and his encyclopedic knowledge of deli meats, but apparently Israeli bureaucracy requires third-party verification. Mrs. Goldstein looks at me like I've lost my mind. "David, your father argued with the rabbi about parking spots for 20 years. Of course he was Jewish. Who else would have that much passion about synagogue politics?" But she writes the letter anyway, probably thinking, poor boy has clearly inherited his father's anxiety about everything. The genealogical research is like being on a very boring episode of Who Do You Think You Are? Except instead of discovering I'm related to royalty, I'm discovering that my great-grandfather kept excellent records of his synagogue donations. Look, here's proof that great-grandpa Nathan complained about the synagogue building fund in 1923. This is crucial evidence for your patrilineal Jewish identity claim. My friend Dave listens to all this and shakes his head. Mate, you're basically building a court case to prove your dad was Jewish so you can move somewhere where they'll argue about whether you're Jewish. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm creating a legal brief for paternal Jewishness that would hold up in the Supreme Court of Jewish authenticity. The timeline for patrilineal cases is apparently longer because they need extra time to verify that, yes, Jewish fathers can indeed create people who are Jewish enough for citizenship, but not Jewish enough for religious purposes. It's like they need to double-check the math on this very complex equation: Jewish dad plus non-Jewish mum plus citizen but not congregant. But there's something weirdly satisfying about being in this liminal space between Jewish and not Jewish. I'm like a Jewish immigrant with training wheels. I get most of the benefits of Israeli citizenship, but with a built-in excuse for not knowing all the prayers. Sorry, I can't lead services tonight. I'm only patrilineally Jewish until further notice. The children question is particularly fun. If I have kids with my non-Jewish wife, they'll have the same confusing status I do. But if I marry a Jewish woman, our kids will be fully, unambiguously Jewish. So I'm basically in the market for a wife who can provide religious legitimacy to my future offspring. Looking for Jewish woman for marriage. Must be able to convert my theoretical children from patrilineal limbo to full Jewish status. Serious inquiries only. When I finally submit my patrilineal Aliyah application, it's basically a thesis on my father's Jewish authenticity with supporting documentation that traces our family's Jewish involvement back 3 generations. It's not just an immigration application, it's a comprehensive argument for why my dad was Jewish enough to create someone who's Israeli enough. My dad reads through the final documentation package and laughs. "So you wrote a book about how Jewish I am so you can move to Israel, where they'll tell you that you're not Jewish enough." And yes, that's exactly what I did. I've created a scholarly work on paternal Jewish identity that would qualify for academic publication. The Goldberg Paradox, a case study in patrilineal Jewish immigration to a country that doesn't recognize patrilineal Judaism. Though I have to admit, there's something oddly poetic about the whole situation. I'm making Aliyah to a Jewish state where I'll immediately join a community of people who are simultaneously Jewish and not Jewish, welcome and not welcome, citizens and religious outsiders. It's like joining a very exclusive club for people who don't quite fit into the regular club. And honestly, after navigating this bureaucratic maze of patrilineal Jewish identity, I feel like I've earned the right to be confused about my religious status. I'm not just making Aliyah. I'm making Aliyah with a comprehensive understanding of exactly how Jewish I am not, and might become, depending on which office I'm standing in at any given moment. At least I'll never have to wonder about my place in the Jewish community. I'll always be that guy who's Jewish enough to vote but not Jewish enough to marry, citizen enough to serve in the army but not Jewish enough to be buried in a religious cemetery without converting first. It's a very specific identity, but hey, at least it's well documented.